The year was 1969. The world was quiet but not calm. High above the earth, the moon was shining as always. It looked peaceful, silent, untouched. For thousands of years, humans had looked at it and dreamed. Poets wrote about it, scientists studied it, children pointed at it from rooftops. But now something was about to change. Inside a control room in the United States, dozens of men sat in front of glowing screens. Their faces were serious. No one was smiling. Every second felt heavy. Every sound felt loud. This was not a movie. This was real, or was it? A man in the control room slowly removed his headset. His hands were shaking. He looked at the big screen in front of him. The signal was weak. The picture was not clear. Lines moved across the screen. Then a voice came through the radio, a voice from space. "This is Apollo. Do you copy?" The room froze. Everyone stopped breathing. The call was desperate. Something was wrong. Millions of people around the world were watching their televisions. Black and white images showed a strange surface, dust, rocks, darkness, the moon. The narrator speaks softly. On this night, the world believed history was being made. 3 men were inside a small spacecraft called Apollo 11. They were far from Earth, too far. No human had ever gone this far before. One of them was supposed to do the impossible, to walk on the moon. But before that moment, there was fear, deep fear. The radio signal cracked again. "This is Apollo, we have a problem." The control room went silent. Sweat rolled down faces. Papers fell from shaking hands. A senior officer stood up slowly. His heart was racing. If something went wrong now, there was no rescue, no help, no second chance. The moon is not friendly. It has no air, no water, no mercy. One mistake meant death. The narrator continues. What the world did not see was the fear behind the cameras. The astronauts were trained, strong, brave, but they were still human. One of them looked out of the small window. The Earth was far away, just a blue dot in darkness. Home felt impossible to reach. Another astronaut checked the fuel levels again and again. His voice was calm, but his mind was not. The third astronaut stayed quiet, too quiet. Back on Earth, the signal suddenly became clear. A voice spoke slowly. "The Eagle is preparing to land." The Eagle, that was the name of the landing module. If the landing failed, the astronauts would be trapped forever. The fuel was low, very low, only seconds left. The narrator pauses. This was the most dangerous moment in human history. The landing computer started showing errors. Alarms rang, beep, beep, beep. The control room panicked. What do the alarms mean? Is the computer wrong? Should they stop the landing? No one was sure. A young engineer shouted that the alarms could be ignored. Another man disagreed. Voices became louder. Time was running out. Then the final call came. Landing successful. The room exploded with cheers. People hugged. Some cried. History was made, or so they believed. Hours later, a man stepped down from the ladder. His foot touched the moon. A sentence was spoken. A sentence the world would never forget. But something felt strange. The picture quality was poor. The shadows looked odd. The movement looked slow, too slow. Some people noticed, others did not. The narrator asks quietly, "Why was the camera already placed outside? Why did the flag seem to move? Why were some moments missing?" At that time, no one asked these questions loudly. The world was happy. The mission was called a success. But behind closed doors, another call was made. A private call, a desperate call, a call that was never shown on television. Some say it was a safety call. Others say it was a warning. And some believe it was a lie being protected. The astronauts returned home as heroes. Parades were held. Smiles were everywhere. But when asked questions years later, their answers were short, cold, uncomfortable. Their eyes looked away. The narrator ends the story with a slow, heavy voice. "On that night, the world believed humans touched the moon." What if the desperate call was not about landing? What if it was about saving the truth? The screen fades to black. Text appears. Did we really land on the moon? And the question remains. The next morning, newspapers around the world shared the same headline. "Man has landed on the moon." People smiled, some cried, some prayed. It felt like magic. Humanity had touched the sky. NASA stood proud. In front of cameras, officials spoke with confidence. Their voices were clear. Their words were strong. They said the mission was perfect. They said everything went as planned. They said history was made. The narrator speaks calmly. This was the story the world was told. According to NASA, the mission began days earlier. A powerful rocket lifted Apollo 11 from Earth. Flames filled the sky. The ground shook. Millions watched in fear and hope. 3 astronauts were inside. They were trained for years. They were ready for anything, or so it seemed. NASA explained that the journey to the moon took several days. During this time, the astronauts checked systems, tested controls, and spoke to Earth regularly. Their voices sounded normal, too normal. The spacecraft entered moon orbit. The moon looked close now. Large, silent, dangerous. Then came the plan. 2 astronauts would enter the landing module called Eagle. 1 astronaut would stay behind, orbiting the moon alone. NASA said this was the most critical part. The Eagle slowly moved away from the main spacecraft. Everything was live. Everything was under control. The narrator pauses. At least that is what the official story says. As the Eagle moved closer to the surface, NASA explained that computers guided the landing. The astronauts only watched and adjusted, but something strange happened. The computer showed errors. NASA admitted this later. Alarms appeared during landing, but they said it was not serious. They said it was safe to continue. The Eagle landed, dust flew, the moon's surface welcomed human feet. NASA said the landing site was chosen carefully. Flat, safe, perfect. Hours later, the world watched the moon walk. The astronaut stepped down slowly. The camera showed everything. He said the famous line, "The world clapped," but the narrator asked softly, "Who placed the camera? How did it start recording at the perfect angle?" NASA explained that the camera was attached to the spacecraft. It opened automatically. That answer satisfied many people, but not all. NASA also showed pictures taken on the moon, clear photos, sharp images, perfect lighting. They said the sun provided all the light, no stars appeared in the sky. NASA explained this too. They said the camera settings were the reason. Again, many people believed, others stayed silent. The astronauts collected moon rocks. They walked. They jumped. They planted a flag. NASA said the flag moved because of the pole, not wind, because there is no air on the moon. The explanation sounded logical. The narrator continues. Every question had an answer. Every doubt had a reason. After the mission, the astronauts returned to Earth safely. They were quarantined, tested, studied. NASA said this was to protect Earth from moon germs. The idea sounded serious. The astronauts stayed inside a glass room. People watched them like rare animals. Later, NASA declared the moon safe. The mission was complete. The astronauts went on tours, they spoke to schools, they smiled for cameras, but something was missing. When asked deep questions, their answers were short, simple, almost memorized. Some reporters noticed, others did not care. The world had already decided the moon landing was real. The narrator's voice becomes slow. When a story is repeated many times, it becomes truth. NASA released documents, charts, audio recordings. They showed confidence, they showed pride, they showed power, but they also kept secrets. Some recordings were lost, some data was missing, some original tapes were erased. NASA said it was an accident. They needed space. Old tapes were reused. The explanation shocked some people. How could the greatest moment in history be erased? Why was the original footage gone? NASA said copies were enough. The narrator asks quietly, "Is a copy the same as the original?" Years passed, technology improved, people went to space again, but no one returned to the moon, not once. The official reason was money. The moon was too expensive, too risky, not important anymore. That answer raised new questions. If humans did it once, why not again? NASA stayed silent. The official story remained unchanged. Strong, clean, perfect. But under the surface, doubts were growing. Small at first, then louder. The narrator ends with tension. The official story tells us what happened, but it does not tell us everything, and sometimes, what is missing is more important than what is shown. The screen fades to black, text appears. If the story is true, why does it feel incomplete? The world saw the moon, but the moon also saw the world. A silent camera was already waiting. Before the first foot touched the moon, the camera was ready. It showed the ladder. It showed the shadow. It showed the moment clearly, too clearly. The narrator speaks slowly. The biggest question was not the step on the moon. The biggest question was the camera. Who turned it on? According to the official story, the camera was fixed on the landing module. When the door opened, the camera opened too. Automatic, perfect, no delay, no mistake. The world accepted this answer, but some people paused. They watched again and again. The angle was strange. The astronaut came down the ladder and the camera followed him smoothly. It did not shake. It did not lose focus. It felt planned. The narrator asks quietly, "Can a simple camera think? Can it predict history?" Back on Earth, experts studied the footage. They slowed it down. They zoomed in. They watched the shadows. Something did not feel right. On the moon, there is only one light source, the sun, so shadows should be simple, straight, same direction. But in the video, shadows crossed each other. Some were long, some were short, some pointed in different directions. NASA explained this too. They said the ground was uneven. They said light bounced off the surface. The answer sounded scientific, but not everyone was convinced. The moon has no air, no clouds, no dust floating, so the sky should be black, very black. Yet the lighting on the astronauts looked soft, balanced, almost like studio light. The narrator continues. The moon was bright, but the light looked gentle. The flag became the next problem. When the astronaut planted it, the flag moved. It waved. Slowly, people noticed. How can it move? They asked. There is no wind on the moon. NASA replied quickly. They said the flag moved because of the pole, because the astronaut twisted it. The movement slowly stopped. That explanation worked for some, but others noticed something else. Even after the astronaut stepped away, the flag still moved. Just a little, as if something invisible touched it. The narrator whispers. What was moving the flag? Then came the jumps. The astronauts jumped high. They moved slowly. NASA said it was low gravity, 6 times less than Earth. The movement looked correct, but some scientists disagreed. They said the speed did not match moon gravity perfectly. It looked controlled, measured, like a performance. Another strange detail was the footprints. The moon has dry dust, no water, no moisture, so footprints should fall apart, but the footprints stayed sharp, clear, deep. NASA said moon dust is special, very fine, it sticks together. Again, an answer was given, always an answer, but questions kept growing. Then there was silence. No sound of breathing, no sound of movement, only calm voices, clear voices, perfect audio. The narrator asks softly, in a heavy suit, under stress, so far from Earth. Why did they sound so calm? The camera never failed, the signal never cut. At the most important moment in human history, everything worked perfectly, no mistake, no accident. Some people found that strange, because technology in 1969 was weak, computers were slow, signals were fragile, yet this mission looked flawless on screen. The narrator pauses. Sometimes perfection creates doubt. Years later, when asked about the camera, the astronauts gave simple answers. Short answers, no emotion, no excitement, almost rehearsed. One astronaut even said, "I do not remember." That answer shocked many people. How could someone forget the greatest moment of his life? Or maybe he remembered too much. The narrator lowers his voice. What if the camera did not record history? What if it created it? The moon footage became a symbol of human power. A victory of belief, but symbols can hide truth. They can replace reality. The camera never showed mistakes, it never showed fear, it never showed confusion, only success, only control, only pride. The screen slowly fades to black. The narrator ends with a heavy question. If the camera was silent, what else was silent? Text appears on screen, the camera showed everything, or did it? Years passed, the cheers faded, the flags were folded, but the faces remained. Whenever the astronauts appeared on screen, people noticed something strange. They smiled, but their eyes did not. Their words were polite but empty. They were heroes, but they did not look happy. The narrator speaks softly. Sometimes the truth hides in the face. After returning from the moon, the astronauts were welcomed like kings. Crowds filled the streets, cameras flashed, children waved flags, but during interviews something felt off. The astronauts answered questions. They did not explain much. Their replies were short, careful, controlled, almost like they were afraid of saying too much. A reporter once asked a simple question. What did it feel like to stand on the moon? The astronaut paused. He looked down, then he said, "It was interesting." That was all. No excitement, no emotion, no wonder. The narrator asks quietly, "Is that how a dream sounds?" Another interview showed all three astronauts sitting together. They looked stiff. Bodies were tight, their hands were still. One smiled but stopped quickly. Another kept blinking. The third avoided eye contact. Psychologists later studied these interviews. They noticed signs of stress, signs of discomfort, signs of silence hiding something. NASA said they were just tired, exhausted, under pressure. That sounded reasonable, but the interviews continued for years, and the same pattern appeared again and again. When asked about technical details, they answered fast. When asked about emotions, they froze. One astronaut was asked, "Do you believe what you experienced was real?" He laughed nervously, then said yes, but his voice shook. The narrator lowers his tone. Words can lie, but bodies often speak the truth. Some people noticed that the astronauts often repeated the same phrases, the same sentences, the same expressions, as if they were memorized, as if they were trained. A journalist once asked a different question. "Why haven't we gone back to the moon?" The astronaut did not answer immediately. He looked uncomfortable. Then he said, "We lost the technology." The room went silent. Lost the technology? How can technology be lost, especially technology that once changed history? The answer confused many people. Later, another astronaut was asked the same question. He said the same words, exactly the same. The narrator whispers, "Coincidence or coordination?" One moment shocked the world. During a live interview, a young girl asked an astronaut, "Why should we believe you?" The astronaut stared at her. His face changed. He looked angry. He pointed his finger and said, "Because I was there." The room felt cold. People were uncomfortable. That was not the answer they expected. Heroes usually inspire. They do not defend. The narrator pauses. Why did the truth need defense? Another strange detail was silence. Long silence. After returning from the moon, the astronauts stayed quiet for weeks. They did not rush to tell stories. They did not write books immediately. They stayed behind glass. NASA said it was quarantine, but silence can be heavy, too heavy. Some believe that silence was not about health. It was about control. One astronaut later said, "There are things I cannot talk about." That sentence echoed in many minds. What things? Who stopped him? And why? Years later, during a private event, an astronaut was asked again about the moon. He sighed. He looked tired. Then he said, "You will never know the full truth." That moment was recorded and shared and questioned. NASA did not respond. The astronauts aged. Some passed away. Some stayed silent forever. They never changed their story, but they never expanded it either. No new details, no deep memories, no emotional moments. The narrator speaks slowly. Real memories grow richer with time, but scripted stories stay the same. People who believed the landing said they were soldiers trained to be calm. People who doubted said they were actors trained to perform. The truth stayed hidden behind quiet faces, behind careful words, behind controlled silence. The screen darkens. The narrator ends with a heavy question. If the greatest journey in human history left no deep emotion, Was it truly a journey at all? Text appears on screen, their mouths spoke history, but their faces told another story. For many people, doubt was not emotional, it was scientific. They did not ask, how did it feel? They asked, how did it work? Science does not believe stories, science asks for proof. The narrator speaks clearly. If humans landed on the moon, science should support it. NASA said the strongest proof was moon rocks. They brought back hundreds of kilograms of rocks. NASA said these rocks were not from Earth. Scientists studied them, they were old, very old. NASA said these rocks prove everything. Many scientists agreed, but then something strange happened. Some moon rocks were given as gifts to other countries. Years later, a few of these rocks were tested again. They were fake. They were Earth rocks. NASA said it was a mistake, a mix-up, an accident. The narrator pauses. How many mistakes can history allow? NASA then showed another proof. Lasers, they said astronauts placed mirrors on the moon. Scientists on Earth could send laser beams. The beams would return. This experiment worked. NASA said only humans could place those mirrors. But critics asked another question. Could robotic missions place them? The answer was not clear. NASA did not explain much. Then came radiation. The moon is outside Earth's protection. Deadly radiation lives there. In 1969, technology was weak. Computers were basic. Shields were thin. Scientists asked, how did the astronauts survive? NASA replied, they passed through the radiation quickly. The explanation sounded possible, but risky, very risky, too risky, the narrator whispers. Would a government risk 3 lives or risk a lie? Another question followed. Heat. The moon has extreme temperatures, very hot, very cold, no air to balance it. NASA said the suits protected the astronauts perfectly. But engineers later said those suits were not tested for such extremes, not fully. Again, NASA said they were enough, always just enough. People began to notice a pattern. Whenever doubt appeared, an answer appeared, but answers came without deep detail, without full data, without original records. The original data was gone, lost, erased, reused. NASA admitted this. The narrator speaks slowly. Science depends on data, but the data was missing. Some independent scientists tried to recreate the mission. They used old computers, old math, old technology. They failed. They said with 1969 technology, this is almost impossible. NASA disagreed. They said impossible does not mean untrue. The debate grew. Science stood on both sides. One side trusted NASA, the other trusted math. Then came another strange detail. No raw footage. What the world saw was not original. It was a copy. A copy of a copy. The best quality footage was gone. NASA said, we recorded over it. The narrator asks quietly, would anyone erase the greatest moment in history? Supporters said it was normal at that time. Critics said it was careless or planned. Science does not like carelessness. Science needs repeat tests, but no one went back to the moon. No repeat, no confirmation, only belief. Years later, technology became powerful. Cameras improved. Rockets became stronger. Computers became millions of times faster. Still no return. The moon stayed empty, silent, untouched. The narrator continues. Science moves forward, but the moon story stayed frozen. Robots went to Mars, satellites explored deep space, but humans stayed away from the moon, the closest place, the easiest target. NASA said, we have new goals, Mars, future, but critics asked, why skip the proof? Some scientists quietly changed their minds. They did not speak loudly, they did not fight NASA. They simply stopped talking. Others spoke loudly and were mocked, called crazy, called conspiracy thinkers. Science became emotional. That was dangerous because science should be cold, neutral, truth-based. The narrator lowers his voice. When science becomes emotional, something is wrong. In classrooms, children learned one story. In private, scientists whispered another. The moon landing became more than science. It became identity, pride, power. Questioning it felt like betrayal. So many stopped asking, not because they believed, but because it was easier. The narrator ends with tension. Science can prove truth, but it can also hide it when fear enters the lab. The screen fades to black. Text appears slowly. If science is real, why is the proof untouchable? Some people stopped looking at the moon. They started looking at Earth. They asked a different question. What if it was not filmed in space? What if it was filmed somewhere else? The narrator speaks slowly. Every story needs a place. In the late 1960s, America was under pressure. The Cold War was real. Fear was real. Losing was not an option. The moon was not just science, it was power. Some believe the greatest secret was not in the sky. It was in a room with no windows, far from public eyes. A place where silence was controlled. Lights were placed carefully. Cameras were tested. Dust was spread on the ground, not moon dust, Earth dust. The narrator pauses. If you wanted to fake the moon, you would need the perfect stage. Hollywood already knew how to create dreams. It knew how to make deserts look like planets. It knew how to control light, shadow, and emotion. Some people believe experts from the film world were invited, not officially, quietly. No records. No names, just work. The studio theory began as a whisper, then it became louder. People compared moon footage with old films. The lighting looked similar. The camera movement felt familiar, too smooth, too calm. In real danger, cameras shake, hands shake, fear shakes everything, but the moon footage stayed steady, like a controlled shoot. The narrator asks quietly, why was fear missing? In space, mistakes happen, but the moon video showed none. No panic, no confusion. Only clean success, perfect timing, perfect framing. Some believe many takes were done, not one landing, but many rehearsals until it looked right, until it felt real. Then it was shown to the world. Others believe the landing was partly real, that astronauts went into space but never landed. The moonwalk was filmed later on Earth to save face, to save power, to save pride. The narrator continues. A half-truth is harder to catch than a full lie. Supporters of NASA laughed at these ideas. They said, why would thousands of people stay silent? But history shows silence is possible when power is strong, when fear is present, when rewards are high. People follow orders, they sign papers, they forget or pretend to forget. The room with no windows did not need many people. Only a few, a director, a camera crew, some engineers, some actors. The rest only saw what they were allowed to see. Then came another strange detail. The moon landing footage looked slow. NASA said it was low gravity, but when people adjusted the speed, it looked normal, too normal, like Earth. NASA said that is coincidence. The narrator lowers his voice. Too many coincidences create suspicion. Another detail was dust. On the moon, dust should fly far. There is no air, but in the video, dust falls quickly, down like Earth dust. NASA said the gravity explained it. Some scientists disagreed. They said the math did not match. The debate grew darker. Then came the question of motivation. Why fake it? The answer was simple. Fear. Fear of losing. Fear of looking weak. Fear of falling behind. The moon landing was a message, not to science, but to enemies. We are first. We are strong. We control the future. The narrator speaks slowly. In war, truth is often the first victim. Supporters said it would be the biggest lie in history. Critics replied, exactly. Big lies are harder to question. They become sacred, untouchable. The studio theory never had full proof. No pictures, no documents, only patterns, only logic, only doubt. But sometimes doubt is enough. The narrator pauses again. Truth does not fear questions. Only lies do. Years later, new footage was released. Better quality, clearer images, but something felt wrong. The quality was too good, too clean. Like modern technology, not from 1969. NASA said it was restored, enhanced, cleaned, but critics asked, how do you restore what was lost? The room with no windows stayed hidden. If it existed, it left no trace, just questions, just shadows, just silence. The narrator ends in a calm but chilling tone. If the moon landing was filmed on Earth, then the greatest journey never happened. Only the greatest performance did. The screen fades to black. Text appears slowly. If it was a set, who was the director? To understand the truth, some people stopped asking how. They started asking why. Why would a nation risk such a huge lie? Why would smart people agree to silence? Why would history be shaped this way? The narrator speaks slowly. Every action has a reason. In the 1960s, the world was divided. Two powers stood against each other, America and Russia. This was not just a competition. It was a war without guns, a war of pride, a war of power, a war of fear. Whoever controlled space controlled the future. Russia had already won many races, first satellite, first animal in space, first human in space. America was behind, the pressure was heavy, very heavy, people were losing faith, leaders were losing control, the moon became the final battlefield. The narrator continues. The moon was not about science, it was about winning. America promised its people one thing: we will go to the moon. The promise was public, loud, clear. The whole world heard it. Backing down was not an option. Failure was not allowed. If America failed, it would look weak. If it looked weak, it could lose allies, lose power, lose control. The cost was too high. Then came a silent question. What if we cannot do it in time? Technology was new. Computers were weak. Mistakes were deadly. Time was running out. Russia was watching, waiting. The narrator lowers his voice. When time runs out, shortcuts become tempting. Some believe the plan changed, not completely, but enough. The launch could be real, the journey could be real, but the landing too risky, too dangerous, too uncertain. So a safer option appeared, a controlled option, one that guaranteed success. No explosions, no death, no failure on live television. Only victory. The narrator pauses. Sometimes power chooses certainty over truth. If the mission failed publicly, the damage would last for decades. Trust would break, fear would grow, enemies would celebrate. But if the mission succeeded, even if it was not fully real, the world would move on. People would believe. Belief is powerful, stronger than facts, stronger than doubt, stronger than truth. The astronauts became symbols, not just men, symbols of success. Heroes cannot fail, heroes cannot question. Heroes cannot speak freely, they carry the story, not their own truth. The narrator continues. A hero's silence is part of the price. The scientists also paid a price. Some stayed quiet to protect their careers. Some believed the lie was necessary. Some never knew the full truth, only small pieces, enough to work, not enough to question. The media played its role. Television showed what it was given. Newspapers printed what they were told. Questioning was seen as disrespect, unpatriotic, dangerous. The moon landing became sacred, above doubt, above debate. The narrator asks softly, When a story becomes sacred, who dares to touch it? Years later, wars changed, enemies changed, but the moon story stayed frozen, untouched, unchallenged, because changing it would break too much: textbooks, reputation, trust. The cost of truth became higher than the cost of silence. Some leaders may have believed one lie to protect millions is acceptable. Others may have believed truth can wait. And some may have believed the lie became real the moment people believed it. The narrator speaks slowly. History is written by winners, not by witnesses. Even today, questioning the moon landing creates anger, not curiosity. Anger because it feels personal, like an attack, not on NASA but on belief. And belief does not like to be shaken. The moon landing was not just an event, it was an identity, a message to the world: we are capable. We are leaders, we are first. The narrator pauses one last time. If the truth destroys identity, would you still choose it? The screen darkens, the sound fades, the final words appear. What if the moon landing was not about the moon but about winning? At the end of every story there is silence, not answers. Silence. The moon is still there, cold, quiet, watching. It has not changed. Humans have. The narrator speaks softly. After all the questions, one question remains. Did humans really walk on the moon, or did humans simply believe they did? For more than 50 years the world has lived with one story. It is taught in schools, shown in museums, celebrated in documentaries. It is not just history, it is identity. For some, questioning it feels wrong, almost dangerous. Because if this story is false, what else could be false? The narrator continues. The moon landing is not just an event, it is trust. Trust in science, trust in government, trust in history. Breaking that trust is frightening. So many people choose comfort over doubt, belief over curiosity, silence over question. Those who believe say thousands of people worked on it. Science supports it. Why would anyone lie so big? Those who doubt say power lies big. History hides truth. Fear creates silence. Both sides believe they are right, both sides use logic, both sides use emotion, and the moon stays quiet. The narrator pauses. The moon has never spoken, only humans have. Years pass, technology becomes stronger, cameras become sharper, rockets become smarter. Still, humans do not return. The moon remains a memory, not a destination. Some say it is because there is no reason. Others say it is because there are too many questions. If humans return, everything will be tested again. Footprints, equipment, flags, truth, and truth is risky because truth does not care about pride, it does not care about history books, it only cares about reality. The narrator lowers his voice. Truth does not need protection, only lies do. Maybe humans really landed, maybe the doubts are wrong, maybe the questions are unfair. That is possible. But maybe, just maybe, the story is not complete, and incomplete stories create shadows. The astronauts are gone now, most of them. They took their memories with them, their silence with them. If they knew the full truth, it left the world with them. NASA still stands by its story, strong, unchanged, unmoved, the same words, the same answers, decade after decade. Supporters call that consistency, critics call it control. The narrator speaks one last time. When a story never changes, it becomes legend. Legends inspire, legends unite, but legends are not always true. They are what people need to believe. The moon landing may be the greatest achievement in human history, or the greatest story ever told, or something in between, a mix of truth and performance, science and politics, courage and fear. The narrator pauses longer than before, silence. Then, the real question is not, did we land on the moon? The real question is, if we didn't, would we want to know? Because truth changes everything. Heroes fall, systems break, belief shakes, and not everyone is ready for that. The moon does not care, it waits. It has waited for billions of years, it can wait longer. One day humans may return with better cameras, clearer proof. No Cold War, no pressure, no fear. That day the moon will answer. Until then there is only one final question. The screen slowly fades to black. No music, no sound, just words on the screen. Did humans walk on the moon, or did belief walk ahead of truth?